Welcome to the deep dive. If you're here, you're looking for the fast track to being well-informed.
And today, we are really digging into something that challenges how most of us think about health.
It really does. We're moving past the simple idea of biology to look at these invisible forces, things like gender, race, and class.
And how they systematically determine who lives a long, healthy life, who gets quality care.
And who is just failed by the medical system
Yeah.
again and again.
Yeah,
So our mission for this deep dive is to really uncover and analyze what our sources are calling these discrete barriers.
right, these hidden hurdles.
Exactly. The hidden hurdles, the systemic rules that are built right into our institutions, they create these huge, sometimes fatal inequities in healthcare access and outcomes for millions of people.
And it's so much more than just whether you can afford an insurance plan.
Oh, way more. It's about these ingrained societal standards that basically treat certain bodies as the default and others as, well, an exception.
And that standard starts colliding with real life almost immediately. I mean, one of our sources shares this incredibly personal journey of a transgender man who wanted to become a parent.
Okay.
To do that, she had to reverse parts of his transition, which put him right in the middle of a medical system that it wasn't built for him.
It has no framework for that.
It has no language for it. This is where you see the sociological concepts of sex, the biological parts and gender, your social identity, just smash right into each other during these huge life events like pregnancy. The system just can't cope.
So to really get our heads around how these systems fail, we probably need a few key concepts on the table.
Definitely. First up are the social determinants of health. This is everything outside the hospital. It's the whole array of personal, social, economic, environmental factors.
So your income, your education, where you live, even the amount of stress you're under.
Exactly. All of that stuff influences your health way more than your genetics do.
Yeah.
And the other key idea is the sick role.
The sick role.
Yeah, it's basically the expected patterns of behavior for someone who is sick and for the people caring for them. And as we're going to see, this role is so heavily shaped by gender norms, it affects when people seek help and even how they seek help.
That idea of norms is the perfect place to start, actually. Let's talk about the invisible sort of default body standard, because for centuries, our sources point out, the cultural and scientific idea of the ideal body has been, well, it's been fixed.
It's that white cis male physique.
Yes, exactly. Famously captured in Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man way back in the late 1400s.
And that image is everywhere.
It is. And what started as this, artistic exploration of proportion became the scientific standard for the healthy, normal human. And this is where it gets really, really destructive.
Because when one body type is the default for all your research and design, everybody else ends up paying a very real price.
A huge price. And the consequences are so immediate. I mean, let's just look at clinical trials.
Okay, yeah. For decades, racial and ethnic minorities, who are often the groups facing the greatest health challenges, have been just inadequately represented in these studies.
So the treatments aren't even designed for them.
Exactly. The new drugs, the new therapies that come out of these trials, they don't benefit everyone equally because they were never tested on their bodies. It just makes existing health disparities even worse.
And this isn't just happening in a lab somewhere. This failure has real-world public safety consequences.
It really does. I mean, think about military equipment. For so long, protective armor was sized and shaped for the male physique.
Right.
Which meant that women in the military were at a much higher risk of injury or death. The ill-fitting armor just didn't protect their vital areas. Our sources note this oversight literally gave snipers what they called a clean shot.
That's horrifying. The thing designed to protect you becomes a liability just because of a bias in its design.
And it took decades to get lighter female specific armor produced.
And that same bias shows up, every time we get in a car?
Every single time. Crash test dummies are often based on male body standards from the 1970s. Frozen in time.
70s. Seriously.
Seriously. And the result of that exclusion is just staggering. For a female occupant in a frontal crash, the odds of being seriously injured are 73% greater than for a man.
73%.
And women are 17% more likely to be killed than a male occupant of the same age. When we talk about structural failure, this is a fatal flaw built right into the cars we drive every day.
Wow. So the default body standard literally costs lives through flawed equipment, flawed safety tests. That forces us to ask, just how bad are these disparities when you look at the big picture, nationally and globally?
Well, if we zoom out and look at global health stats, the picture for the U.S. is pretty sobering.
How so?
Let's take the infant mortality rate. That's deaths before the first birthday for every 1,000 live births. In 2020, the U.S. rate was 5.4.
And how does that stack up globally?
We ranked 50th. 50th. We're trailing countries like Iceland, which has a rate of 1.54. And researchers have found this incredibly powerful link.
Which is?
High infant mortality is directly associated with countries that have high gender discrimination. It's almost a one-to-one correlation. Improve the status of women, and more children survive.
So gender equality isn't just some abstract policy goal. It's a public health intervention.
It's one of the most effective ones. And you see the same story with life expectancy, which has actually been declining here in the U.S. recently.
Right, I've seen those headlines.
In 2020, it was about 81.5 years for women, but only 76.5 for men.
That's a 5-year gap. That's huge.
It's immense. And while there's some biology in there, the social factors are critical. Men are statistically less likely to go for routine health care. They have much higher rates of suicide, homicide, and road injuries. That sick role we talked about.
Yeah.
It's playing out right there.
And then when you layer socioeconomic status on top of that,
It gets even worse. A 2016 study found something that's just. It's hard to even wrap your head around. It found a 14.6-year gap in life expectancy between the richest 1% and the poorest 1% of people in the U.S.
14 and a half years. Let that sink in. We're not just talking about having fewer resources. We are talking about a quantifiable time penalty. Poverty in the U.S. costs you a decade and a half of your life.
It's the ultimate price of inequality. And it's the same with education. If you have a college degree, you can expect to live over 10 years longer than someone who didn't finish high school.
And that's not just about the diploma itself. It's about the higher income, the better access to healthy food, the safer neighborhoods that come with it.
This is where we have to bring in the concept of intersectionality.
Okay.
The idea is that different forms of disadvantage like race, gender, poverty,
Yeah.
they don't just add up. They multiply. They compound each other and create these unique forms of oppression.
Give me an example.
Well, women are already more likely than men to live in poverty. In 2019, it was about 11% of women versus 8% of men.
Right.
And living in poverty means living in environments with exponentially higher health risks. You're exposed to food deserts, where you have to travel miles just to buy fresh groceries. You see this in parts of Portland, Oregon. You have constant exposure to toxins like lead and mold.
And things we just take for granted.
Things we completely take for granted. Over 1.1 million people in the U.S. don't have a piped water connection to their homes. That hugely compromises basic hygiene and health.
And then if we look at this through the lens of race in the U.S., the structural damage is it's immediate.
It's so stark. In 2020, life expectancy for Black people was 71.8 years. For Black men, it was only 68.
68 compared to what for white people?
Compared to 77.6 years for white people. These are huge, decades-long gaps. And they reflect systemic barriers to healthcare access, like high uninsured rates for American Indian and Alaska Native populations and for Hispanic populations. This is a system problem, not a personal one.
This analysis of institutional failure, it leads us right into our next area. How institutions actively try to control bodies, often using medicine as the tool. This brings us to medicalization.
Yes, medicalization is so important here. It's the process of defining normal parts of life as sort of deviant or as problems that need a medical fix.
And historically, this has been applied mostly to women's bodies.
Overwhelmingly, menstruation, menopause, pregnancy, childbirth, all of these natural processes have been framed as things that need medical intrusion, management, control. Male development just isn't viewed with that same clinical scrutiny.
You can even see it in advertising.
Oh, absolutely. The societal discomfort is so deep. Remember the controversy back in 2017 when an ad first used red liquid instead of that weird blue stuff to represent menstrual blood?
I do, yeah. People were outraged.
So many objections. It just shows how society continues to frame menstruation as something dirty or deviant that has to be hidden or, managed by a product.
And that idea that some bodies are deviant or undesirable connects directly to the absolutely horrific history of eugenics.
Yes. The belief that you can improve the human species by stopping people with so-called undesirable traits from having children.
And this targeted marginalized groups, right? People of color, disabled people, the mentally ill.
Exactly. And this wasn't just some fringe theory. It was policy. It was enforced through forced sterilization. Over 60,000 people were sterilized in 32 states in the early to mid-1900s.
We talk about it like it's ancient history, but our sources are clear that it's not.
That's the most critical point. It's not history. Forced sterilization continues today. Women in California prisons were being forcibly sterilized as recently as 2010.
2010, that's unbelievable.
And internationally, 20 countries still require sterilization for transgender people to get legal gender recognition. The institutional control over who gets to have a body and a family is very much a current crisis.
So what do the sources say about why modern institutions have failed to stop this? Or to stop new forms of control from popping up?
Well, the contemporary flashpoint is obviously abortion rights. Since the Supreme Court decision in 2022 removed federal protections, the issue went back to the states.
And we're seeing the public health fallout in real time.
We really are. Sociologists are now calling this governmental violence. The states with the most restrictive abortion laws, and these are often states with white, male-majority legislatures, also have the absolute worst health outcomes for women and children.
So higher infant mortality, higher maternal mortality.
The highest in the country. Also the highest child poverty rates and the highest rates of uninsured women. The act of restricting bodily autonomy is, without question, making people sicker.
And it has this chilling effect on doctors, even for care that is still legal.
A profound chilling effect. Doctors in those states may hesitate to perform necessary medical interventions, even in cases of kidney failure or septic shock, because they're afraid of being sued or prosecuted. They prioritize their own legal safety over a patient's immediate health.
So all of these factors, race, gender, poverty, institutional control, they collide. They create this perfect storm. Let's look at where that collision is most devastating right now, especially in the crisis around maternal care.
The Black maternal mortality crisis is, I think, the most tragic contemporary example of intersectionality in healthcare.
The numbers are they're beyond belief.
They are. In 2020, the maternal mortality rate for non-Hispanic Black women was 55.3 deaths per 100,000 live births. That's nearly 3 times the rate for white women.
3 times.
2.9 times, to be exact. And this isn't just about what happens in the delivery room, which is a common misunderstanding. What's truly alarming is the rate of late maternal deaths.
Right.
The ones that happen from 6 weeks up to a year after birth.
Okay.
Black women were 3.5 times more likely to die in that period than white women. This tells you the crisis goes way beyond childbirth itself. It's about a sustained systemic failure in follow-up care. It's about dismissal and discrimination.
And we see the same life and death stakes for the transgender community.
Absolutely. The violence and discrimination they face leads to severe, measurable health outcomes. Transgender people are 8 times more likely to experience psychological distress. They attempt suicide at 9 times the rate of the general U.S. population.
And when you add financial barriers to that, denial of care, lack of insurance.
The systemic damage becomes catastrophic.
So if the system is failing so many people, where are the bright spots? What are the interventions that are actually working?
Well, one movement that's gaining a lot of traction is the resurgence of doulas and midwives.
Right. Providers who offer that physical and emotional support during labor.
Exactly. They're a vital alternative to the standard, often overly medicalized model of childbirth. In the UK, midwives attend over 2/3 of all births. Here in the U.S., it's only about 8%.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So expanding access there could be critical.
It could be a game changer for improving maternal outcomes. And then you have organizations like WPPath and ISA, the Intersex Society of North America.
And they're focused on gender-affirming care.
Yes, they're advocating for systemic change to end the shame and the non-consensual surgeries that have been performed on intersex people for so long. They're fighting to make informed ethical care the standard, not the exception.
At the end of the day, all of these movements seem to be pushing toward a bigger idea.
They are. The ultimate goal isn't just better health care, it's reproductive justice. This is a concept defined by the Sister Song Collective, and it's much more holistic.
So it's not just about abortion.
Not at all. It's the human right to maintain bodily autonomy, the right to have children, the right not to have children, and crucially, the right to parent the children you have in safe and sustainable communities. It's about total control over your life, free from these structural barriers.
What we've seen throughout this whole deep dive, then, is a pretty clear diagnosis. Health outcomes are not random. They are not just bad luck.
Not at all. They are structurally determined.
Determined by these institutionalized norms, like the centuries-old male ideal body standard in science, and by legal and economic frameworks, like abortion restrictions or lack of insurance. These systems lock together to create just, profound, unnecessary suffering and premature death.
And if we look at the global evidence, the path forward is actually quite clear. The data shows that countries with higher educational gender parity have a greater life expectancy for both men and women.
For both, not just for women.
For everyone, investing in gender equality policies raises the floor of health outcomes for the entire society.
That is compelling evidence that parity is a solution. So we've established that the United States has seen a decline in life expectancy and ranks 50th in the world for infant mortality. We also know that gender equality is directly linked to better health for everyone. So here is the final provocative thought for you to consider. If gender parity in income and political representation were achieved nationwide, what specific health metric, besides maternal and infant mortality, do you think would see the biggest positive shift? Is it a drop in cardiovascular disease, maybe, or a decrease in chronic stress indicators? Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.